Good evening, and I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Board of Education of Round Lake 116 here in the Round Lake High School Media Center on 2/22/22 at 5:59 p.m. If I can, let me get a roll call, please.
Mr. Francisco,
Here.
Mrs. McGinley,
Here.
Mr. De Vera,
Here.
Mr. Jewett,
Here.
Mrs. Klingler,
Here.
Miss Lee.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, if everyone can make sure to set your cell phones to silent, and board members, please have all phones off the table. Next up, let us go to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up is our presentation and discussion on the District 116 proposed health and safety protocols. Dr. Mendoza.
So thank you, Board President Francisco and audience. Thank you for being here. Before we get into the meat of the slide deck, I wanted to start with just some opening comments. I do want to say respectfully that it's been really hard 2 years, and we have constantly over the last 2 years had to make adjustments to how we've been navigating and kind of dealing with the pandemic. I do understand, and I want to say it publicly, that nothing I say this evening is meant to minimize anything that anybody is going through. It's my 28th year, and it's probably been the most difficult 2 years that I've ever experienced in my career. I think we've tried to be very proactive in keeping people safe as a result of the numerous mitigations that we've implemented over time. We've done, in my opinion, a good job at trying to proactively communicate with our families periodically throughout the course of the year when needed through emails, newsletters, etc. We've remained very collaborative with our association. It's been a really good partnership in the sense that we have shared interests in keeping people safe and healthy to the fullest extent possible. And I think you would agree as a board, we've kept you in the loop every step of the way. It's important to give a little background in terms of what got us to this point. So a while back, about 700 students in 140 separate school districts filed a lawsuit against the executive order connected to mandated masking, excluding staff and students from school as close contacts, and mandated testing for unvaccinated individuals. About 2 weeks ago, give or take, two to 3 weeks ago, a judge in Sangamon County ruled on behalf of the 700 referenced plaintiffs and indicated that their due process rights were violated. Class certification was not granted, and in layman's terms, basically the judge ruled that the ruling only applied to those 700 individuals referenced in the lawsuit. The Illinois Attorney General immediately appealed the ruling in an attempt to stay the Sangamon County Court ruling. And late on February 17th, which is last week, I think 11:45 p.m., an appellate court refused to stay the Sangamon County ruling, meaning that ruling remained in place against the current executive order requiring masking, excluding close contacts, and testing unvaccinated staff members. As per I guess we have board attorneys, but I think just generally speaking with the attorneys that represent school districts are indicating that ruling by the appellate court calls into significant question our ability to actually enforce the executive order. At this time, our school board, up to this point, has not taken any action regarding any part of the mitigation planning, because up to this point we've been operating under the executive order, and thus we're governed by the executive order. As a result of the recent appellate court decision, the District 116 administration believes that the Board of Education needs to take formal action on whatever our plan will be moving forward connected to safety mitigations. Additional things that as your superintendent that I would like you to consider, and some of this will go into more detail in the presentation. Quite recently, for the last 2 years, minimally once a week, the leadership teams in the various school districts in the county are in consult with the Lake County Health Department to make sure that we're following the guidance, we're doing things appropriately. Last week, the Lake County Health Department recommended that school districts no longer consider community-based transmission and positivity rates as part of their building/district level decision-making process. But rather, we should be using active cases, active positive COVID cases in determining what we should be doing in our schools. As of today, and this number changes, but this trend has been going on for probably 3 to 4 weeks. As of today, we have 0 active staff cases out of over 1,000 employees, 0. And we have 3 active positive student cases out of over 6,600 students. So in the aggregate, right now, we have 3 total positive COVID cases out of 7,647 individuals. On February 28th, I think you know this, but I'm just going to call it out. The governor's indoor bar and restaurant mandate expires. I simply mention this because we know that our staff members, students, and staff cross community boundaries to shop, eat, and interact with their families and friends. The other thing that I will mention now, and you'll see this as part of the presentation, and definitely not trying to minimize what's going on around us, but if we're going to transition to a different plan or phase, in my humble opinion, now is the time to do it. Our numbers are plummeting. We're not seeing a significant amount of school-based spread. We are headed into the spring. And it also eliminates trying to implement a comprehensive plan at the start of a new school year if we were to wait until the fall. So those are some of my opening comments. So I'm going to go through the slide deck. I know the board has reviewed the slide deck in advance, so I'm definitely not going to read the slides, but I'll definitely refer to them. So in order to be just consistent and to ensure our nomenclature is understood, for the purpose of this presentation, there's 3 different definitions. One is universal masking. That's what we're doing right now in all of our schools, the buses, while indoor all the time, regardless of our vaccination status. Situational masking is, masks will be worn at certain points in the day, and it's not all the time in all of the instructional settings. It could be in larger congregate settings when we're not able to create appropriate space. And it could be, it could happen in certain large spaces. For example, assemblies, theaters, our middle schools typically have very large choirs. It could be in the choir room. So it's exactly as the term says, it's based on situations. We also know that our schools are configured differently. So the situational masking in one building could look different than it would in another. The third category is masks recommended, not required. Essentially, that we are recommending masking, but individuals have choice as to whether or not they actually wear the mask. We could, and you'll see this later, there are certain situations in this category where we could have masking, and because frankly, we still plan on isolating people who are COVID positive. They can't come to school. That's different than a quarantining. And essentially, the way the guidelines work is day 6 through 10. If they came back on day 6, they would have to wear a mask. So I also want to call out at this time, the mandates on busing would apply because that's a federal requirement. So even in masks recommended, we would have masks on our school bus. So the next slide is essentially talks about the three levels. So our recommendation tonight includes a tiered system based on active case rates in our schools. We're not looking at a district number. We are looking at individual schools. We definitely are going to be tracking district, but what we're suggesting is in order to be in each of these phases, the active case rates have to be a percentage of the population in order to be in that phase. The benefit of doing something like this is it allows us to make adjustments based on changing conditions on the ground. And so this slide is designed to show you what the actual percentages of the populations are. So for example, 1% or less of active cases in a building, that would be in the recommended phase. If it's over 1 and under 2.5, it would be the situational masking, and then universal masking would be 2.5% or higher. Now, I will tell you, we appreciated the guidance from the health department in that we should use active cases to make school-based decisions, but what they did not do is tell us how to do that. They left it up to individual school districts. And I can tell you that this tiered mitigation strategy, you're not just going to see this in Round Lake. You're going to see it in the surrounding communities. And I'm not going to name school districts because that wouldn't be appropriate because they may have board meetings lined up this week. But almost every district that I know of in the county is either doing this or they will be doing this pending their board meeting. Definitely the districts around us are in this mask recommended protocol. I will say the percentages could vary based upon the community. Some communities who, I don't know how else to say it, but they're not happy with masking. I just don't know how else to say it. Their percentages to go to universal masking, the threshold's a lot higher. So they're willing to take on more cases in order to go to universal masking than some other districts. So that's all I'll say about that. So what we've done here, in the district, but based on those percentages, the 1%, 1% or under 1.1 to 2.5 and over, at a school like Pleviac, as a percentage of the population, these are the number of active cases that we'd have to have in order to move into the different categories. So we wanted to show you in real time what it would look like at Pleviac. The next slide is the very same explanation, but we picked one of our middle schools. So you're going to see that the tiered system in place based upon these percentages. And then last but certainly not least, we did the high school. The high school is our biggest school. We have over 2,200 students. And I do want to make this very clear. When we talk about cases, it's combined student and staff because they're working in the same facility. It doesn't really make sense to have our students masking and our staff not, and our staff not and our students masking. We're interacting with each other. So when we're trying to establish the denominator in determining the math for coming up with these percentages, we're taking the total number of students and the total number of staff and coming up with a number, then taking the total number of active cases and dividing it by that number. So the next slide is designed to show you since September, had we implemented a tiered system, and you can see it by color, this is where these are the categories that Pleviac would have been in. It's very clear we would have spent time in the recommended masking zone. We have some time in the situational masking zone, and then we definitely have time, actually, and for Pleviac specifically, a little bit of time in situational, but it looks like we jumped right up to universal because of the massive increase, and that was obviously right after the new year when things were really significant. The next slide, same information, John T. McGee. Now they spend most of their time in the, where the increase is. There's some time in universal masking, but they're also spending some time in the situational. And then last, but certainly not least, the high school, you can see would not have gone into universal based on the percentages. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but keep in mind what I said, the schools are configured differently and the spacing is different. There's, more kids at the high school, but there's more open space. So maybe it wasn't, as bad here. And again, I'm not an epidemiologist and I don't profess to be, but I can tell what the data says. So we have this data for all of our schools. So the next thing is I want to talk about mitigations. One of the things that's very, very important, and the analogy I use is like a light switch. We don't want to be turning a light switch on. And so one of the things that's very important to us is that even though we are going to be recommending this tiered approach, I want to reiterate, we're still keeping numerous mitigations in place regardless of which category it's in. So what you see here on the far left is the mitigation measure. Under the current executive order, the way that I would think of that is current practice. And then the far right would be the updated protocols if the board supported this transition. So I think the one that's fairly easy is the masking. I just want to say we are recommending masks. But in the end, it's up to the individual as to whether or not they want to take the mask off. But we're making the recommendation to have masks. That's the difference between the two categories. Transportation, no difference. Children will be wearing masks on the bus. This one is really important. So I just want to call this out. Isolation is different than quarantine. Isolation deals with COVID positive individuals. Quarantine deals with people who may not have COVID but were exposed to COVID as a close contact. So under the transition plan, under this legal situation, one of the things that was ruled that the executive order contained that the appellate court struck down was quarantining. So right now, anybody that's within 3 feet for 15 minutes in the course of a day has to be sent home from school unless they're vaccinated. So what we're saying is we can't do that. If the board approved this, we wouldn't be doing that, but we still are going to be contact tracing to identify who the close contacts are so that we can call those families and let them know their child was a close contact. And then really there's two things. One, keep an eye on your child, and if they get sick, you have the option of, even if they're not sick, you can take them to get tested, and certainly want you to do what you think is best. So we are going to continue to contact trace, even in this new, even with this new plan. Isolation, this one is no different. These are for people who test positive. I just want to reiterate, we're still not allowing sick people to come to school. And again, the thing we've said this entire time is, if you're not feeling well, stay home, and that won't change. We are going to continue to follow for extra and co-curriculars in both scenarios, no change, the IDPH and IHSA guidelines. Testing is a little bit different. This was also part of the executive order that the appellate court struck down, is right now, and this primarily affects the adults in the district, is the unvaccinated staff members are required to be tested at least once a week. Well, that would no longer happen. But I want to also reiterate, even though that wouldn't happen, we are still going to have BinaxNOW tests in all of our health offices available for people who want to get tested, symptomatic or not. So we have that ability. We can coordinate it through our school nurses. We're still going to social distance where allowable. That's not going to change. We are still going to control access points to our schools. This isn't, we have typically controlled our access points, but what we've done since the start of the pandemic is we've really limited that even further so that we can track who's coming in and out of the building for the purpose of contact tracing. Then we have and will continue to engage in regular and consistent cleaning and sanitizing. That is not going to change. We are going to have an active case dashboard online so that we want to be transparent with our community. And anybody in the community will be able to see our active COVID positivity rate. on a 5-day rolling average, which is what we're recommending. The reason we're recommending the 5-day rolling average is so that we don't allow one day, potentially a spike in one day, to have us flip the light switch and change tiers, only to have to switch back the very next day. We don't want to do that. And then additionally, recess and physical education, now that we're headed into the spring, that's definitely more challenging in the winter. Doesn't seem like spring's here based on the weather this evening, but it is easier for us to send our students outside for PE, for recess. When it warms up, we're actually able to open more windows and have more airflow, so that's something we'll be able to do as well. The next slide is there's additional things that we would put in place, but we would, if we had a staff member who felt unsafe or anxious or whatever, we would certainly be happy to provide them with an N95 mask. We also, based upon direct conversations with principals in individual situations, we could have a staff member attend a meeting virtually if needed in unique situations. And then we're certainly looking at individual air purification systems based on some of our rooms in the district are inside rooms that don't have windows. So we're looking at trying to make certain exceptions in those areas. So the last slide is essentially what the recommendation is going to be. Is you saw the layered mitigations that we presented. I'm not going to reread those to you, but essentially what we're asking you to consider approving is the layered mitigation measures outlined in this presentation that you've seen this evening. This is a work in progress. One of the things that I've been most appreciative with our families and our team is that we've been able to make adjustments fairly quickly. We have a team that meets minimally once a week to assess how things are going, and that would continue to happen. We also continue to have meetings with our Lake County Health Department every week. And so there could be situations where you could have a classroom, a school, something like that, where there could be an uptick, which would cause us to change, to be responsive to whatever that change is. So at this time, I want to pass it over to the board and answer discussions based upon the specificity of your question. I may have some of my team members help, but I mean, this is pretty much all we've been doing for the last 2 weeks, and then certainly hear from the community. So.
All right, we will start with board questions, and I will make it easy on everybody. I'll start with one quick one. This is really a two-pronged question. Number one, what are the methods we're going to be using to communicate building numbers to all the different stakeholders? How are we going to be communicating that to the individual families involved, to the buildings involved? And then number two, off that 5-day rolling, are we picking a specific day, so every Monday that starts and then that week, or how does that change happen? Because as Dr. Mendoza stated, we don't want to necessarily be going from one level to the other each day. So walk me through that process.
Okay, so for the first part, the manner in which we'll be communicating with our families and our staff, we've put together a draft of what will be sent out to families and staff when we do need to make changes to the status. So that's ready to go. For example, we've combined two of our buildings, the Round Lake Transition Center and the Education Service Center. It's a smaller group of staff and students in that building. Therefore, if you have one positive case for several days in a row, it's going to put you into that situational masking, which is where we are today. If we don't have any new cases again tomorrow at that building, we'll be moving back into the recommended but not required. So right off the bat, we would be communicating with the transition and ESC staff and students, families, that we would be in a situational masking to start tomorrow. But we do foresee that switching later this week as long as, again, we don't have any additional cases. Right now we have a dashboard that is posted on our website that we've modified in preparation for if the board approves this evening. And that has built in that 5-day rolling average percentage for each of our buildings. So that will replace the current dashboard that is up on our website at this time. It does break out the total cases by students, staff, total cases, and then that 5-day rolling average.
And then it would be, I think one of the things, Mr. Francisco, would be at the end of the day, Friday, we would determine what would happen for the following week. Is that correct?
We could do it that way, but we also have information for the rolling average. So I think we can watch the trends throughout the week to be able to make that call more frequently than at the end of the week.
Oh, it could be Tuesday to Tuesday, Wednesday to Wednesday. It could be just based on what the need is then.
It could be daily if we wanted it to be that, because we consistently have the last 5-day rolling average.
Okay, so once there's 5 days in, then it could still, to Dr. Mendoza's point, we could be switching a light switch if all of a sudden it goes to X number of cases and we go to mandatory masking, but then the next day, 2 of those cases drop off and then we go backwards. So we could be changing back and forth on a daily basis.
We could be if we determined to do it in that way. I lost my train. It's the way that we'll be communicating is by email and text. And we will be tracking these numbers at 2 p.m. at the end of each day. So we would know what we were doing for the next day at 2 o'clock each school day.
So the tracking is daily. So to Dr. Mendoza's point, we really would be kind of looking at it, and not necessarily, it's a 5-day number for the overall average, but that's just to smooth out the overall average. We're still going to be looking at it on a daily basis.
Yes, we have access to that data every day.
Thank you.
I guess still along the lines of Mr. Francisco's, I guess I just want to make it more simpler as a parent. You know, I wake up on Wednesday morning, I have a kid at Pleviac, McGee, the high school. I want to know, when I just went on our website right now, I want to be able to, as a parent, log on to our district website and I see Pleviac, McGee, and the high school. So I know as a parent, when I wake up, I can also have those conversations with my student. You know, at the high school, it's, you know, maybe it looks different than McGee. Is that what it's going to look like? I guess I want to make sure it's more simplified. Because when I look at our website now, and I click on even the COVID-19 dashboard, I know as a parent, I think it might be confusing for me.
Yes, so right now we have the dashboard, the Google dashboard in the sheet. And what you will see tomorrow, if it's approved this evening, is color coding for each of those buildings. There's an additional layer that we can add to the website that has potentially a button for each of our schools, so it's an easier look when you get to that page.
The other thing we could do is have 3 categories. I'm not telling you how to do it because I trust that you'll do it properly, but you could have the 3 categories and have the schools listed and which one they are, in addition to the color coding. But just for a visual so the parents could see it might be helpful.
I think that would be helpful. I mean, you know, everybody gets up, you're trying to get your kid to school, you're trying to get to work, you know, you're getting everything together. I think as visually pleasing and easy to read would, you know, as everybody gets ready for their day, as a parent, you want to know what your children are walking into.
And as clarification, you said that those numbers would be updated at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So theoretically, we should be communicating in the afternoon on Tuesday what Wednesday's day is going to look like. So it's not like a parent has to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, like in the old snow days, and find out and look on WGN to see whether or not to put a mask on.
That's correct.
Yeah, so to further that, so you said they're going to get text messages and email alerts.
If a change is needed. So once we move into, if we move into recommended but not required, we will not be communicating anything with parents and staff unless there is a change that is necessary. So it's not like everybody's going to be getting a message daily.
But you know, if I have Pleviac, I have McGee and the high school. If it changes at the high school on Tuesday night or Tuesday afternoon at 2, I know I'm going to get a text regarding the high school on Tuesday for Wednesday.
Yes.
Will the text specifically mention the schools? Okay.
Yes, the text and the email will mention the specific building. and it will only be targeted to the families and staff members within those buildings.
Additional questions from the board? Now's your time.
I do, but I was just giving other opportunities. Okay, thank you. A population of students, I know there's been communication about it. I don't see it here on the presentation, but one I think we need to address for parents is our students here at the high school who are part of the, I'm sorry, I still call it the tech campus. It's,
Transition center.
no, at CLC.
Tech campus.
Oh, this,
It
okay.
is Tech campus.
Yes, tech campus. I forgot, maybe I would revert the old name, but those students who attend that during the day here at the high school.
Yeah, so I just happened to get this at about 3 o'clock today, and I actually have it on the sheet, and I didn't mention it, so I apologize. The tech campus is moving to mask recommended tomorrow. So if we end up staying with universal masking, we're going to have to make some decisions about whether or not we allow our students to go to tech campus, because if the district's position is that we're going to universally mask, then they're going to actually be out at tech campus with kids who aren't wearing masks. So I think right now we have roughly 130 of our students that go to tech campus. So
All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, so I'll keep, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to give opportunity. I just want to reiterate and just confirm, students who ride the bus, everybody has to wear a mask.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Is it gonna be the same type of disciplinary action if we go to, for example, universal masking or situational masking and the kid refuses? I hate to bring that up because our kids are good, but on the one-off circumstance, how is that gonna be dealt with?
There's numerous things we could do. We could follow formal discipline, but I will tell you the enforcement is going to be challenging for both students and staff. It's not just students. I certainly don't want to be in a situation, and I confirmed with the attorneys today, essentially what the appellate court's ruling did was call into question the enforceability of the executive order. We have phenomenal kids in our district. The last thing we want to do is be hauling kids out of here because they won't follow the rules. A consequence, long term, could be one of the solutions, and this is what some of the other school districts are doing, is they're pulling their bleachers out in their gyms, and they're having the kids that don't want to wear the mask sitting in the gym for the entire day. So as I think about this, our students were out of school a lot last year. I've been grateful. Our families have been tremendous. We've been in school every day. But now we get into an issue of, what lever do we want to pull to try to get kids to comply? We would certainly, if the board decided with universal masking, we would certainly try to enforce it. But that is not unique to Round Lake. It's been a challenge in other districts in the community. You're seeing it on the news. Not good or bad. And one of the things I love about our kids is they stand up for what they believe in. There's been protests, those types of things. But at the end of the day, you get to a point potentially where it could be disruptive so much that you're not running school the way you would normally run school. So, frankly, if you're following straight discipline and we told a student to put a mask on, it would be insubordination. And what if they choose not to do it and they start going to a different area of the building? We have protocols in place to try to do it, to try to address those things, but that's not something that typically happens in our schools. So I hope I answered your question.
No, you did, thank you. Sorry, I'm looking, I apologize. A lot of these you answered, so I appreciate it. So we are not gonna require tests for symptomatic staff or kids at this point, like if this were to be approved?
Eric, do you want to talk about existing protocol for testing? We have testing available right now for symptomatic individuals. So they have the option of coming into the building, going down to the nurse. But if they're at home and they're sick, we tell them not to come into work. So Eric, why don't you talk about how that works a little bit?
We're fortunate to have an ample supply of Binax Now tests here in the district. So if a student or staff member is ill while at school, they can get tested in the health office using Binax Now. Now, what we don't want is any student or staff to be ill and then come into the building. But if they're in the building and not feeling well, they can definitely be tested using Binax Now in the health office.
But it's up to them to self-report. I think one of the things that we've learned, and I know I certainly have done this prior to having to deal with all this, maybe I have a runny nose, maybe I don't feel super well, and I would just try to power through it, and I wouldn't tell anybody. Well, if people don't report it, we're not going to know. So that's why we've just stressed to our kids and our families, if you're not feeling well, please stay home. And if you happen to get to work or you're a student and you're not feeling well, we're able to provide those rapid tests and we get the results back within 10 minutes.
And then they would be, for example, if they do feel bad, they stay home, they would be given like the ability to make up the work and not be counted against them, right? Because I do feel concerned sometimes that the parents would want to mitigate that. They don't want to have their child be looking like they're just missing school. And they are being more cautious, which is appreciated. So I want to make sure like we have guidance in and around that.
Yes, the students would get to make their work up unpunished, just like it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an attendance code that's designated C19, so that would be excused, that would not count against them, and they would be able to make that work up.
If a symptomatic student went to the nurse's office, do you contact the parent and get consent for testing, or do we test?
We would absolutely contact the parent and get consent before we would test them, yes.
So I do have some concerns, and I would be remiss if I did not say that I am a little concerned. So I think that the plan is actually very comprehensive, and I love our administrators, and I think you guys are amazing. And I know that there was a great deal of thought that went into this, but I do feel concerned that it's perhaps maybe 6 months too early to do this. So I wonder, are we at all concerned that we're perhaps jumping the gun on it? Or do we feel that we have to go this route? Like it's because of the ruling.
Yeah, so I think what I have typically tried to do, so this is a very, it's a very personal thing. And so I can't stress enough how much I respect everybody's thoughts, opinions, feelings. Anybody who's nervous, I mean, those are real feelings, so I'm not trying to minimize it in any way, shape, or form. I wouldn't have made the recommendation had I not thought it was the time to do it. But I also feel like if we went the other way and kept universal masking, there's an argument that wasn't appropriate. For me personally, we have been very, very cautious. I mean, our students were out longer than many of the neighboring school districts. So we're taking this holistic approach. It's not just the court ruling. It's the court ruling coupled with situation on the ground. Our numbers are dropping. We have no staff positive cases. We only have 3 students. That has been a trend over the last 3 weeks. We have additional mitigations in place. We're not just getting rid of all those. And I did reference it. This is kind of like what's happening. It's in different communities as well. So it's really hard. It's not an easy decision. And I know there's going to be people who are not happy with the recommendation, which I totally understand. But I wonder, given where we are right now with our current situation, if not now, then when, right? So are we waiting till it's 0? Like if we would have had 0, because that may happen. We may have a day where we have 0 staff, 0 student. Well, what are we then going to look at? Is it positive? Is it community transmission? Is it positivity rate? It's like the goalpost keeps moving. So I feel like This plan is a flexible plan. It gives us ability to change based on situations on the ground. And I'm confident that we'll be able to implement it properly. And so the one thing I do want to say is if the board happens to approve this recommendation, this mitigation plan will expire June 30th. So it's not permanent because things are changing so fast. Something could happen at the state level, legislatively, legally, that I don't want to create a binding situation for you as a board, for me as a superintendent, for the district. So this really gets us through the end of the school year. In June, we'll reassess, and then I will be coming back to you as a board to figure out what do we think we want to do when school starts.
And as clarification, as built, the plan that you've put together and the team has done such a tremendous job with does have the automatic process of going back into masking when those building numbers hit those targets.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we said. If we hit the 2.5% or higher over a 5-day rolling average, we send out the communication, universal masking, until such time, in line with the plan, that would warrant moving to a different phase.
I definitely agree that that part is really very good. My concern, and I'm sorry, I just have to say it, is I know we have been very cautious, and I have many kids in the school too, as you know, so I'm very grateful for that. I feel like our numbers were very low because we were very cautious, and so I feel concerned. You know, we always see a spike after vacations, after, holidays. So I feel concerned, when we go, for example, to spring break, and we have people that go and see family, which they should do. I mean, we need that for community. When it spikes, we're going to be reactionary, I feel like, at that point. And so I feel concerned about it. And I just have to.
It's absolutely legitimate, I understand, and I'm not going to name school districts, but I will tell you, there are other districts that have been implementing a mask recommended policy for going on 10 to 14 days, and I'm contacting them, they're not seeing an increase. So, but I'm not saying it wouldn't happen here, so I want to be very clear, I'm not making any guarantees, but they are not seeing a change in their trend that was triggered by the change in practice. So whether or not that applies to us, I can't say. I just feel like it's information you should have.
Actually, I'm deeply grateful for that. Thank you. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
And I also want to echo Mrs. Klingler. I'm struggling because I am in healthcare as well, and I deal with both ends. I want to hear from the community. I want to hear what they have to say. I know that we are not going to make everybody happy across the board. Whichever decision we make, there are going to be people who don't agree with us. My concern is the vulnerable, the staff and the families who have children under the age of 5 who can't be vaccinated. And like I see, okay, so using the example for the high school of 62 cases, I see times 5. I see 5 family members at home. I see a vulnerable grandma. I see a child under 5. So in my head, that 62 is actually a community number of 310. So that concerns me a little bit. Passover is coming, and Easter is coming, and spring break is coming, and family gatherings are coming. And I saw firsthand the crisis that we were in as a hospital after the winter holidays. We were bombarded because the numbers just escalated. And also people this is a working community, and working community, and people have exhausted their PTO. Their staff have exhausted their PTO, having to take time off because their child is in quarantine again. And I fear that people send their kids to school sick. I know that people come to work sick because they have no time left. And I know that those are legitimate concerns for me and some community members as well. I do applaud you for this multi-layered approach to this plan. I think it's great. I think a lot of time and effort went into it, and I think we have done such a wonderful job as a community, and you, Dr. Mendoza, and the administrators. But I would also be remiss if I didn't express some of my concerns as a parent in the community and also as a healthcare worker.
I have one more question, I'm sorry. I just want to go back to the measures and mitigation analysis under extra and extracurricular or co-curricular activities. I know it says ID, PH, and IHSA guidelines, and I know we're coming up on spring sports here for the high school, but for the elementary schools who do intramurals, do they fall under the ID, PH, or how are they going to fall under?
Kurt and Beth, haven't we typically followed the same protocol at our middle and elementary schools that govern the IHSA, whatever? Yes?
We were a little more conservative initially with middle school athletics, but we aligned with IHS.
So that's a yes, correct? Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to confirm. Thank you.
Mr. Jewett, Mr. DeVera, any comments, any questions? If you have none,
No,
you
I
have
don't have
none.
any questions. No, I appreciate the program, appreciate the effort put into it, and I just one comment. I mean, you know, we're not requiring not to wear a mask. There's always that option to keep the mask on as you choose. So that's something to keep in mind as well. It's about choice as far as I'm concerned on this program. So.
All right, hearing no more questions from the board to the administration, now we will move into the public comment phase. Members of the public may participate in public comment during regular board meetings and special meetings by attending in person or by submitting an electronic public comment form. Please note that speakers are limited to 3 minutes in time. Public comments will be accepted in the following manner. In-person public comments will be accepted prior to electronic public comments. In-person public comments will be granted for a total of 60 minutes, which is 3 minutes per person. Electronic public comments will be accepted following the in-person public comments. A maximum of 15 electronic public comments will be read to the board members during the meeting. All other electronic public comments will be provided to the board in written form and will be recorded as part of the meeting packet as formal record. Electronic public comments will be accepted for 24 hours following the board meeting and will be, again, recorded as part of the meeting packet as formal record. A link to the electronic public comment form can be found inside of the communications for this board meeting. At this time, we will start with local public comment. I've got a couple in front of me right now. We will start with Ms. Schoen, Becky Schoen.
Good evening, President Francisco, members of the board, Dr. Mendoza, and members of the community. Hi, my name is Becky Shane, and I'm a parent of 3 children at Round Lake Schools, 2 at Indian Hill and 1 at Round Lake Middle School. First, thank you for your service to our school district. I do believe that each of you has our children's best interest in mind. I want to share with you how this pandemic has affected our family. The last 2 years have been a struggle, from working from home while supervising e-learning and teaching math to my now 3rd graders while trying to process my reports at work, to figuring out how to juggle multiple roles. It's been a long 2 years, a very long 2 years. 2.5 weeks ago, I received a call no parent wants to receive. My daughter had been exposed to COVID. She happened to sit at the same lunch table as another student that had COVID. I was really worried when I received that call, not because of the possible health risk to my daughter, but for her social and emotional well-being. She was not excited to be out of school for 10 days. She dreaded every moment of it. She had a test planned on Tuesday, and being under quarantine disrupted her study sessions and affected her test score. Out of her 7 teachers, just 1 reached out to her to connect and give her assistance for her schoolwork. During those 10 days, she took 3 PCR COVID tests, and all of them were negative. However, even with the negative test, she was not given the opportunity to return to school. In addition to that, parents taking time away from work to assist with schoolwork, respond to social emotional concerns, and supervising had a great impact on our family. I am happy to see the new protocol removes the requirement for 10-day quarantine for close exposure. I wish this would have been enacted 2 weeks ago so our family did not have to experience that for ourselves. There is a time and a place for masking. As the presentation shows, depending on totals of COVID cases in specific schools, masking might be necessary for a short moment. But let's give parents and families the options on when and where to mask their kids. Let's give families those rights back when the risks are low. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, second one I have a note from is from Mr. Michael Finley.
Good evening. I came to share my personal experiences with my family as well during COVID. It's not just this school year, it's last school year. They remember it. My children went to kindergarten on an iPad. I came to these meetings last year trying to get our children back into school, and anytime I came and talked, I was followed by a bunch of people that emailed and wanted their kids at home. You mentioned how hard it is with people and their PTO and trying to take time off. We know how hard that is. We did it the entire school year last year. I know a lot of teachers in the district personally, and I've spoken with them, and they've been told not to poll the children about how they feel about masks. Don't ask the kids, because a lot of the kids feel the same way this group of parents feels. We're tired. We've been doing this for 2 years. We don't send our children to school when they're sick. We're responsible. We're responsible with our 83-year-old family, with our young family that's not able to get vaccinated. My unvaccinated children are not out killing my 85-year-old family members or my 5-year-old family members. We're responsible. We can make the decisions as parents whether or not it's appropriate for our children to sit with a mask on all day. My son has a medical exemption as of this morning because his mask at 2 hours into the day is full of spit, chewed holes in through it. His doctor gave him an exemption because of other medical necessities. And I advocate for my children, but I know there's other children who just go under the wire, nobody notices. You know, have you ever taken a look at a 7-year-old's mask at the end of the day, or even 2 hours into the day, and seen, you know, the teachers tell them, oh, pull your mask back up, pull your mask back up. Why do you think they have it down like this? It's not comfortable. It's not natural. My daughter, we got a message from her teacher 2 months into school. She keeps taking extra bathroom breaks during the day. Can you see what's going on? She said, Dad, I just want to take my mask off for a few minutes. These kids, you gotta pull the children. Ask them how it makes them feel. Why do we not care how they feel? They come home and they talk to us every day, and we get messages home from the teachers saying, oh, well, your son or daughter did this with their mask today. Can you talk with them? It's just ridiculous. My children, they love the opportunity to see people without a mask on, to see that social interaction, the facial expressions, and they're not getting that. That's part of growing up. I mean, look at them. They're 7 years old, and this is their life. It's brutal. So I appreciate the new masking policy. I have no problem telling my children, hey, cases are on the rise. It's probably best everybody wears masks right now. But times like this, I mean, it's just ridiculous to expect our children to not have the same kind of childhood that we all had. I mean,
Thank you very much. At this time, do we have any additional local public comment?
Hi, my name is Jacob Xagas. My stepson attends McGee Middle School. As the rest of the nation goes into more endemic approach and we're learning to live with this virus on a daily basis, I feel the schools ought to do the same. You see, the whole point of wearing the mask is to protect you, correct? And it's to act as a filter. The more you fiddle with the mask, the more you touch it, the more you are spreading possible contaminants. And the severity of COVID relies on the viral load. The more you fiddle with the mask, the more you're dumping viral loads everywhere. So what kid isn't restless? What kid doesn't, fiddle with their mask, being told to pull it up or whatnot? One of the most egregious approaches I've seen is my stepson's tuba mask for band has a special folding hole in it in order to insert the mouthpiece of the tuba in order to what, if there's possible contaminants, to spew it all over the place when played. There's also data I've consulted concerning July 20th. This is from the CDC website. During the peak of the pandemic, it shows that a higher percentage of cases have come from those who claim to always wear their mask, from people who mostly stay at home, and from those who haven't been in direct contact with positive cases. Now, this is a small study, it's small data, but this shows the possibility that wearing a mask, social distancing, isn't exactly the safety net that we once thought it was and have found comfort in. One of what I feel the most important is the psychology behind wearing a mask. Studies have shown that more modern research over the past 2 years has shown that it is hugely detrimental to a child's development and growth psychologically and socially. And as Mr. Michael said, that, it's borderline abhorrent to have a kid grow up and not be able to read emotions. I mean, we're breeding a possible potential to have an era of a regress in social and psychological needs and fabrications. I mean, it's just sad to see the kids grow up that way and what the future may hold concerning that. That is all. Thank you. I also brought literature if anybody would want to consult it, supporting some of the data I've. Of course.
Thank you. All right, and again, I will open up any additional local public comment. Please. And when you come up, just make sure you're holding down the microphone and please state your name, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marla Rivera. I have a son who attends Village Elementary. And the reason I'm here today is because I'm actually very happy to see what you guys have come up with. I feel like we are at a point where we need to try to figure out how to move forward with life. And I'm not in any way saying that COVID is not important. I understand everybody's concerned 100%, as I have family members that are compromised as well. However, at some point here, we have been doing this for 2 years, and at some point, we do need to figure out how to move forward with this. My husband and I decided pretty early on that our son's mental health was going to come first before COVID. And I know not everybody would agree with that, but when you have an only child who is 7 years old and you are told from one day to another that you will no longer be attending school, and you are told that you can't socialize with people, see family members, see grandparents, see cousins, no one, it's very hard to try to figure out how to keep them in a good place mentally. So for us, we kind of made a decision, right? Mental health or COVID, which one are we going to take a chance with? Sadly, in the last 2 years, you are reading stories on young children who have harmed themselves due to the stress that COVID has caused. And that is something that we didn't want to deal with. So 2 years into it, I just kind of feel like, when do we try to figure out how to move forward, right? The numbers are pretty low. Like you mentioned, other districts have already gone through this. They've already started to do this. And with the information you have put there, I feel like it's time to try to do this, right? You're not saying that if the numbers skyrocketed, we wouldn't go back to masking. And I think most parents would feel better about that, right? Like someone mentioned, we're responsible parents. If you tell us that the numbers are going up, I'm going to have a talk with my son and say, you know what, it's time to put a mask back on because we don't want to, the schools to shut down. So I understand everybody's concern, but as parents who want our child to have the option to not wear a mask, we're happy to see something like this. Just in the last 2 weeks, our son has come home and has started to be vocal about not wanting to wear a mask anymore. And when you have your kid start to be vocal about things, as a parent, you feel like you need to stand up for them because we're a voice for him. He doesn't get to tell you guys what he wants to do or his teachers. So I feel like we need to now step in and try to figure out how we can do this. So although I understand everyone's concerns and, people not wanting us to remove our mask, I also would like to say that, as you've said, as you've mentioned, people who want to wear one can still continue to wear one, and we've had conversations about that with our family. People are going to choose what's right for their family. So we would like the option back to choose what's right for our family. You can choose to continue to mask and we'll respect that, as I hope that we can choose and people would respect that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I love having public comments, so do we have anyone else who wants to speak up, please do.
I'm Risa McElhenney, and I have 2 children that are currently at Round Lake High School and one that's a graduate. And I know last year I homeschooled my children because they're adopted from foster care and they could not do the e-learning. So I just want to say thank you to the board. We love Round Lake Schools. We love the board and everything that you guys do for the school. And I think this is moving in the right direction. It's what I support and my children support for our family. I too have an 84-year-old mother that lives in the home, so we are very careful with her. But we all had COVID over the Christmas break, everyone in the family, and we were responsible. We stayed home. We took care of each other. And so I guess I want to move into a question. I think that the direction the board is moving is absolutely the correct one, at least for our family, and is responsible. But my question is, I'm a speech pathologist and I work in another district that's already moved into the highly recommended, but no one seems to be removing the masks. And that's very concerning to me that, and I know there was a lot of discussion after you presented, Dr. Mendoza, about how are the families going to be informed if the kids need to wear them or don't need to wear them. Because I'm thinking that in that district that their families are not being informed that it's okay for the children not to wear them, and that there's some pressure possibly to continue wearing the masks. And so I'm just a little bit concerned. My question is, since it's highly recommended, will there be anything said or done if the people do take their masks off? Because I'm seeing, particularly in the district I work in, that no masks are coming off even though the mandate has changed.
So and I thank you for the comment, and I say this so respectfully, the public comment is not designed to have Q&A, but I will make a statement, which hopefully actually answers the question. One of the things that we do not want, and this was actually sent in the email that I shared with the community and with the teachers, is it is mask recommended. That's actually what the CDC guidance literally says, but everybody should feel the right to make their own choice. And as a school district, me as the superintendent, we're not going to tolerate any sort of ostracizing or bullying or anything like that. What I will say, based upon my conversations with other districts that transitioned to mask universal to mask recommended, is it, and again, I don't talk to all the superintendents, but I talk to many, most of whom are in the general proximity of the district, is typically when the transition happens, you still have many people wearing the mask, because really what the kids are doing is looking around to see who's doing what. And I would say that's probably true with the adults. And then over time, the ones that feel more comfortable end up doing it, and the ones that don't. So I know our kids, our staff, I love our kids in Round Lake. They've always been very accepting. I'm optimistic that our kids and adults will handle things properly and treat people the right way. And so we have protocols in place to address it if it doesn't happen and people are being made to feel uncomfortable because of their choice. So we would address that on an individual basis.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up one more time for local public comment. Seeing none, I will move now and talk slowly to allow Ms. Bennett to get to the electronic public comment.
We have two. First is from a staff member named Marjorie Baker. It says, "Hi, my name is Marjorie and I'm a curriculum and instruction specialist at Round Lake Schools. I love my job, and part of the reason is that I have the opportunity to visit science classrooms in all of our school buildings. I am also a mom of a 4-year-old who is not eligible to be vaccinated. As I understand the new proposed protocol, I see that it removes the mandatory masking in our buildings for both staff and students regardless of vaccination status. It is worrisome to me both as an employee and as a mom. I appreciate the desire to return to normal with regard to what life was like pre-March 2020, but normal life cannot return until all of our population is eligible to be vaccinated. I also recognize the choice that people want to wear or not wear masks, but I also recognize that only as a collective whole can we solve this problem and masks work. I feel that it is worth considering that many staff and students have little ones in the same situation as me, little ones at home that through no fault of their own cannot get a COVID vaccine. Like me, they will be exposed to non-vaccinated people who are choosing not to wear masks. This will increase the risk that we will bring the virus home to our unvaccinated children, especially since the most recent strains of COVID-19 are more contagious and can cause even those of us that are vaccinated to become infected. This scares me as a parent because I have no idea how my child will react to this virus. I would like to support this new protocol, but I just cannot do so at this time. I ask that the board consider delaying the adoption of this protocol until our last of our population is eligible for vaccine. Thank you for considering. The second is listed from Susie, no last name, community member, staff member. Just a question. Will the Pleviac students be able to eat in the cafeteria with the new protocols? And that's it.
All right, then we will call to a close the public comment section of this evening's meeting. Next up, we have the new business and the actual proposal motion.
All right. I need a motion to approve Round Lake Area School District 116 proposed health and safety protocols, approving certain mitigation measures against COVID-19 and superintendent's authority related to the pandemic operations for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DeVera, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any last questions, comments, concern? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
No.
Mr. Joick,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
No.
And the motion carries. And that brings us to the adjournment of tonight's meeting at 7:10. We thank you very much for your time, and we will have yet another meeting on the 28th. Look forward to seeing everyone then. Have a great evening.